What's up, guys? This is Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the broader markets. I'll talk about some key levels to watch for as time goes on, what's happening with the economic calendar heading into tomorrow as we have big data coming out, what you should be watching for as time goes on. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Mumu link that's down below or use my QR code right here to sign up. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100, you're going to get $20 of free Nvidia stock. If you deposit $2,000 or more, you're going to get $50 worth of Nvidia. Deposits $10,000 to get $300 worth of the stock, or deposits $50,000 to get $1,000 of free Nvidia. You're also going to qualify for an 8.1% APY on uninvested cash, and the offer ends very soon in just about 2 weeks from now. So please check out my link down below to sign up or use this QR code. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the markets. So as far as Tesla's going, as you guys could tell, that Tesla had this rising wedge right over here, making higher highs and higher lows. Then we got this rejection, but instead of continuing to dump, we got this pop today and then came back down, which is telling us that Tesla is trading in a range for the time being. But I do want to note that so far Tesla has struggled to hold above 435. And if we do break this, we could attempt to go higher, but as of right now, it looks like we are struggling. And if we get some kind of rejection, first off, it makes sense to do that because SPY and the QQQ are at risk right now as they have not broken key resistance yet. Secondly, Tesla has this rising wedge, and so far it looks like Tesla's trading sideways. Sometimes you could get delayed reactions. And then thirdly, when I just eliminate these lines, what you'll see is that Tesla still has this big gap down here to fill at 393, which could be indicative of more potential downside to come. So I'm not saying that this means Tesla will crash. It could just be a temporary downside move, creating another buying opportunity for the end of the year. But as of right now, I do see some risk on Tesla stock. On the daily time frame, we had two red closes in terms of our candles, and Tesla's once again showing some weakness as a result of testing 435. We failed to break past that. I'm going to be watching to see if we return back down below our key EMAs. So I'm still watching that very closely as Tesla is range bound. Right now, Tesla's range bound, going back and forth between supply and demand is not really doing much. But like I said before, there is a risk of downside if we continue to make lower highs and if we fail to break 435. Also, if you look at SPY and the QQQ, they're also trading sideways. One thing that happened to SPY is that if we go back to the end of October, we were consolidating at 685 and then we got a rejection, right? We consolidated near 685 again in mid-November, then we got a rejection, and now we are consolidating near 685. Now, if we break it, we could turn bullish and go for all-time highs, or if we don't, there's still that risk of a temporary rejection, right? And we're seeing history possibly repeating itself. The QQQ is trying to push higher, but we have not broken 625 yet. And the last time we tested this, we got 1, 2, 3, 4 rejections near 625. If SPY and the QQQ reject, this could also drag Tesla down, as shown by Tesla's overall price peers ratio and the overall price comparison between Tesla and SPY. This tells us that when SPY and the QQQ dip, Tesla tends to follow the trend. When they rally, Tesla tends to follow. When they dip, Tesla tends to follow. It's been like this for pretty much the whole year. And when you look at the price price ratio, Tesla's starting to lose some strength compared to the market, which tells us that there's a little bit of weakness. So what's happening with Tesla news and why do we have big data coming out for tomorrow? Let's talk about this real quick. When it comes to Tesla news, I just want to say that the Chinese-made EV sales are up 9.9%, which is some good news. We finally are getting some good sales data. And then if you look at the charts right here, we had about 86,700 sales in China for the month of November. The Model 3 and Model Y are dominating, and overall they're up 41% month over month in China, which is some good news. On top of that, China is dominating the markets right now. If you look at their overall Shanghai Gigafactory, we had 6.4 million EVs sold in China as a whole. And then Tesla's Shanghai Gigafactory is dominating because that is where the large majority of their production comes. So it just goes to show how November is showing a big increase in China's overall EV market, and Tesla's sales in China are continuing to climb. It's a strong market for them. Also, when it comes to other regions, in Norway, Tesla saw their sales go up, whereas in other European regions like France, Portugal, and Netherlands, and Sweden, we saw their sales go down, right? That's not the best of news, but it is what it is. So there's a mixture of sales in Europe I would say Europe is primarily weak, but then China tends to be strong right now. So we're going to see how that ends up affecting Tesla, but also keep in mind that Tesla is very sensitive to interest rates, and data affecting the market and interest rates could also affect Tesla. That's why we have to go over this data. Tomorrow is going to be a big day because we have lots of data coming out. The first time in many days we're getting big data, especially for employment. Tomorrow at 8:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the ADP National Employment Report for November. This is going to cause some high volatility because it could be affecting the Fed's view of a cut in December if they think it's more or less probable. Why is tomorrow a big day? There's going to be lots of data coming out. Firstly, at 8:15 a.m. And by the way, tomorrow is Wednesday, December 3rd, 2025. So just want to clarify this in case you're watching this video earlier or later. So firstly, at 8:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the ADP employment change. This could be affecting the Fed's overall view of interest rates. Then at 9:15 a.m., we have the industrial production numbers and some manufacturing production numbers, which could cause some volatility, but it's not that crazy. Then at 9:45 a.m., we have the S&P Global Composite PMI, and at 10 a.m., we have the ISM services data for prices, new orders, and employment. What does this all mean? When should we be looking for volatility? Excuse me. So here's what I'm looking for. There's 3 times for volatility tomorrow. This is the main thing you need to remember. 8:15, we have the ADP employment change. That's before market open. There's going to be volatility then it's basically there's nothing way too crazy until 9:45 and 10 a.m. At 9:45, we basically have the S&P Global Composites and Services PMI data, and then at 10 o'clock a.m. we basically have the ISM Services PMI, business activity, employment, new orders, and prices. Look for volatility at 9:45 and 10 a.m. and basically 8:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Those are the main times for volatility. So watch and see what happens as time goes on. On top of this, when it comes to the overall market insights, I just wanted to mention that we are looking for some new sector rotations that are going on because we're seeing some more market value going into like tech right now. And right now, the market does anticipate a nice pump for the end of the year because of the more dovish Fed. We're seeing more bullish sentiment. On top of this, there is also going to be an interesting rotation, and the market is still leaning more bullish for the Fed, but that could be affected by the data that comes out for tomorrow as well. We'll see about that. The Fed is continuing to buy back treasuries, but overall, this is happening at a faster rate, which is a sign of quantitative easing. Of course, we have to wait for confirmation, though. And last but not least, I just want to add on that, at least for the markets, there's not really much coming out in terms of earnings. We just have Dollar Tree and Macy's in the morning, then Salesforce and Snow after market close. Last but not least, when it comes to the overall statistics we're looking at, it's also important to look at the fear and greed index and what our sentiment indicators tell us. Right now, extreme fear makes up the majority of sentiment. We're going to see if this shifts or not. This could also be a little bit delayed. Momentum's at fear. We're going to see if this subsides or not. The put to call option ratio is dropping as we're seeing puts being closed because of delta hedging. And finally, we're seeing the VIX at neutral. The markets does have a more neutral view. So what is my prediction for tomorrow? Let's go over the levels and I'll give you guys my price prediction for Tesla. If we're bullish on Tesla, if we get some really good news, you need to see us break 435. If that breaks, I think we go for the 440s. Okay. If we're bearish, you want to see us reject and lose 419. That's our 200 EMA. If we fail there, we could be looking for a big dump to at least 408. I predict that tomorrow Tesla's going to see a pop in the morning and a drop as we did for the last couple of days and consolidation. But then there is a risk of Tesla turning down looking at the setup as we're forming a distributive pattern and a rejection. Also because of the rising wedge, the rejection so far that we saw today, the 2 red candles for the last 2 days, and simultaneously the big gap to fill down here at 393 makes me suspect we're going to do something like this, see some consolidation, possibly look for some downside. If we lose 419 to go back down to 415 or below, I think the odds do favor Tesla dipping a little bit in a very healthy fashion. That's my prediction for Tesla. We'll see if that ends up being the case or not, but we'll have to just watch for confirmation. I'm not promising this will happen. It also depends on all this data that comes out for tomorrow, but always watch for confirmation. Just know what the charts suggest. And for now, that's the most likely possibility. For SPY, there's 3 things to watch for. Number 1, we have this possible inverse head and shoulders. The left shoulders here, the head is over here. Are we about to form a rejection? If we get a rejection, we're looking for that right shoulder, then a bounce for the inverse hen shoulders. Secondly, what's worth noting is that, like I said before, we touched 685 and then rejected on SPY back in October. In November, we touched 685 and then rejected. And then this time, we're getting close to 685. We come closer, and so far, we're just trading sideways. Are we about to reject like we did the last two times? It's a possibility, in my opinion. So that's the first thing to watch for. The second thing is our Fibonacci retracement right here. Sorry, that's not my fib level. My fib level is over here. Sorry about that, guys. The Fibonacci retracement chart will tell us that the golden pocket happens to be aligned with this level right here, which is where the right shoulder is. And there's a rising wedge thirdly, so that could be another confluence. There's also gaps below to fill on SPY, so that makes me suspect that even if we push a little higher tomorrow, which is possible, if we break 685, we could turn bullish and go to all-time highs. If we don't, we could consolidate like this, and then there's going to be a risk of us turning back down towards 678, if not 675 on SPY. But I could see some attempt for upside and consolidation before a potential rejection. Once again, just like what we saw during the last two times. Same thing with the QQQ. The QQQ has a very similar setup. So basically, we're going to try to keep this very, very simple. If we get some kind of like very, very nice rejection, we could be looking for a move back down as well. Here's what the QQQ is essentially doing. We have this left shoulder here, a head, and then a possible right shoulder, just like this. That's the first thing. There's a rising wedge. There's gaps filled below. And then also know that once the QQQ pushed towards 625 and then got this big rejection, it happened another time in November. We pushed to 625 and then we got this big rejection. Now we're nearing 625. Are we about to consolidate here and then get a big rejection? If it happens again, we could be forming that right shoulder. So if we break 625, we could be looking for the gap fill to 630. But if we can't break 625, we could be looking for a big move down. I think 625 is going to be tested. Then we're going to see some consolidation. Then there's going to be some downside risk. On the IWM, we have support right here at 244. If that does not hold, there's going to be a risk of 242.45 or 50 EMA. If we're bullish, however, we could be looking for a break past 247. The chart is favoring a rejection, and the odds do favor a move back down to 242, forming kind of like an inverse head and shoulders on the IWM. On ES, we have something very similar going on. We're trading sideways right now. We're forming a wedge, so it kind of looks like this. And it looks like we're getting very, very tight. And we're going to see which way we end up breaking from this wedge. Maybe the data tomorrow helps us pick a direction. If we're bullish, you want to see us essentially break past 6,900. If you're bearish, you want to see us lose 6,826 to 6,800. If that fails us, we could be looking for a big move down. Overall, I'm looking for some consolidation, and I think there is a risk of some downside if we get the rejection because of the fact that this is forming a divergence. There's a slight bearish divergence forming, and also because of the other factors such as an inverse head and shoulders and such. Now the QQQ does look, sorry, not the QQQ, NQ looks a little bit more bullish, but we also have a very similar setup. The left shoulder, right, the head, and then a right shoulder, but it could go a little bit higher. It could be looking for like 25,800. Might go a little bit higher before it consolidates and then rejects, and that could be once again a sign that we're about to see some downside. Bitcoin is temporarily bullish, could be looking for 92,600, if not 95,000. If that breaks, then we'll see if we reject, but that could be looking for a temporary bounce as time goes on. For Tesla, like I said before, we're consolidating. If we can't once again hold above 435, we're going to be at risk of dipping back down towards 420. If that fails us, we could be dipping more. But overall, I see some risk of consolidation, some lower highs here. So if we make a lower high, Tesla may consolidate and dip back down to 420 and 415. On Nvda, we have a tendency of pumping and rejecting, pumping and rejecting, pumping and rejecting. Unless we get back above 185, we're still favoring a rejection here, and we could be revisiting 178 to 175 in my opinion. On Aapl, we're looking bullish. We're going to be favoring essentially 288 for some temporary upside. Netflix is looking a bit more bullish, forming a nice accumulation as we're making higher lows. As long as we don't lose 107, we're going to be favoring a push back up towards 110 or above, and we'll see how it goes. MSTR is also forming a bullish divergence. We could be looking for essentially 188 to 190, and we'll see what happens after that. Celsius also has an inverse head and shoulders right here. It might dip a little bit, though, back down to 40.5, and we'll see if we bounce or not, but there is still some risk of downside. Supermicro is doing something very similar. We need to hold above 33.3. If we don't, we could consolidate and possibly dip back down to 32.5. Palantir's looking more bullish, favoring 174.25 as our potential target, and we'll see if we get a rejection. But if we lose 168, we turn back down. Might pop a bit before it turns. Rivian has kind of like a double top here. I think it consolidates and possibly dips lower for like 16.8. SoFi is going to be favoring a test of 28.85. AMD needs to get back above 221. If it can't, it's going to be favoring 210 or below. ARM is going to be favoring 138. If that breaks, we're looking for essentially 140, and we'll see what happens. So be very careful off this double bottom. Could be going a bit higher, and we'll see what happens as time goes on. PayPal also has a slight divergence here, so it could be tipping back down to 62, and we'll see if we bounce. But overall, there is some downside risk. Coinbase is also consolidating. Unless we break resistance, we're still stuck. We have 268 as our resistance and 262 as our support. Could be dipping to 262, and we'll see what happens as we could be dipping to fill this gap to the low 260s. Amazon basically got a rejection forming a wick here, so it could be tipping back down towards 232, and we'll see how it goes. And Meta is also making higher lows here. As long as we don't end up losing 636, we could be looking for 650. Google's also forming a bullish falling wedge. As long as we don't lose 315, we could be looking for a bounce back up to 320. So we'll see what happens. This could bounce a little bit looking at the bullish falling wedge. Microsoft has an inverse head and shoulders, but it's also stuck in the middle. As we touch 492, we like to reject it. At 487, we have support. It may consolidate here and then retest 487, but overall, it's still holding up well. Oracle has a double top. It could be tipping back down towards the low 200s and 198. And then AVGO, which is a Broadcom, is looking weak. If we can't hold 385, I see a risk of 373. The VIX is also on a bit of a downtrend. However, we love to base near 15, so we're going to see if we could bounce near the 15s on the VIX or not. The dollar is also going to be possibly forming an inverse head and shoulders if it bounces here, and crude is going to make a big move alongside the 10-year treasury yield depending on the Fed and our jobs numbers for tomorrow. So SPY and the QQQ are holding up nicely so far, but we're going to see if we get some kind of rejection looking at the setups as we have giant inverse head and shoulders forming alongside rising wedges. Tesla had a rising wedge, and so far we made a high, and we kind of came down from 435. We're struggling to break out. So I do see a risk of Tesla retesting 419 to 420. If that fails us, we could be tipping more. I think we consolidate tomorrow, then we could see some downside if that rejects. There's also a gap to fill at 393, so we'll see how it goes. With that being said, guys, I thank you all so much for listening. Please have an awesome rest of your guys' days. And I'll be back very soon with another update in the upcoming day. I'll see you guys tomorrow before market open. So until then, I wish you all nothing but the best. Have a good day, night, or evening, wherever you guys are around the world. And I'll be back tomorrow to talk about how things are looking. Get ready for lots of data coming out. There could be volatility with the jobs numbers, the services, and PMI numbers, and we'll see how it goes. Thank you for listening, and peace out.